That guy.
Oh, goodness. Let's move to something a little less depressing.
Yes.
Please.
Well, and something empowering, which I am so excited to have her back, Nicole Lapin. She's the author of the book Boss Bitch.
Guys.
Welcome.
The ultimate boss bitch.
I love that you wouldn't say shit earlier, but
But it's the title of a book.
Oh, so that's it.
If it's in the title of a book, I have to say it. It's factual.
Boss B word.
Get it.
And then back to the show is Sarah Hill, our friend, the CEO of Bookstr. Welcome.
Thank
Book
you.
The
expert.
ultimate boss bitch as well.
Yes.
So
Thank
you
you.
can be boss bitch too.
Yeah,
Come on.
I've been
it's
called
for
the
guys
second
as
part
well.
of that. So never together. So what is a boss bitch, by all means?
It's about taking charge of your career and your destiny. Sarah is the ultimate example of that. She is the CEO of this awesome company. You know, you go through different stages of your career, especially as women. You know, sometimes you start a company, sometimes you work for a bigger company, sometimes you're a mompreneur, and every permutation in between. So I think a career well had is more like a rope swing than a ladder, and I wanted to speak to that audience. I saw
Women,
a
do
white
women
space
have
in
to
the
be
market.
a bitch in order to be successful?
So I'm taking back the word bitch and owning it as a badge of honor. I started my career when I was 15 years old. I was on the floor of the exchange when I was 18, so I've been in business for basically half my life. And for me, I've been called a bitch in a derogatory sense. But what they meant was that I was strong, that I was powerful, that I was ambitious, that not only did I want a seat at the table, but I wanted a voice. And if that meant I'm a bitch, then boom, I'm a bitch. And I own that along with so many kick-ass powerful women out here who've endorsed the book. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, of which I'm also a customer. Thanks very much, Sarah. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
And so if you hashtag my bitches on Instagram, you guys can do it right now. I will not be offended. What will you see?
Probably.
Friends, girls
Yeah.
being like, hey,
Female
my
dogs,
bitches.
what?
No, not even in the slightest. You're going to see all best friends. And so I think with media,
Reappropriating it.
Yeah.
100%. And I think with media, Sarah will forget more than I will ever know about a book audience. But you can't be all things to all people. If you're all things to all people, you're nothing to no one. So I knew exactly who my audience is.
Right.
So
So
who she is.
who is the audience? Who were you writing this book for?
So she's my former self, this girl who was totally clueless about money. I grew up in an immigrant household, first generation American, no Wall Street Journal on the kitchen counter, just needed a job, and I was offered one on
From
the
where? Where
exchange.
where are your parents from?
So Israel, we just used cash. Nobody was like, hey, Nicole, let's talk about stocks and bonds. So I was totally clueless. My boyfriend in high school said he wanted to be a hedge fund manager, and I thought the dude wanted to be in gardening. I was super clueless. He dumped me because I couldn't hang out with his Wall Street friends, but who's laughing last? You want to hang out with me.
So you reappropriate the word, but does it address the issue, which is that a man who is strong and powerful and bosses people around is called
President?
Donald Trump, and
one,
a woman who does it is called a bitch today. You reappropriate it, and they'll come up with another word. That doesn't. How does that issue get addressed? Can it be?
I don't know if the word, I mean, there's the bitch word and then there's another word that people use, and I personally don't get offended by it. I'm like, that's just a word to you.
But the
so-
double standard in general, the double standard that
Yeah.
men are expected to do that and women are not.
I think that's a little bit of a stereotype that I'd rather not perpetuate. I think
Right.
that's,
So how can it be?
I just actually don't feel that way in my career. I've been in a male-dominated industry. I've always wanted to be the best, not the best woman. And I actually had a lot of men who've helped me out. So I never felt marginalized in any stretch. So I think a lot of times the enemy is between your ears. And so your own worst enemy. So I think a lot of times women feel like they have a criticism, they're getting interrupted. But truly, like, you have to focus on the 99 supporters or the ambassadors that you have and not that one criticism. My former self used to do that.
I want to ask about the pink ghetto, as a friend of mine called this situation. So she's founded, been co-founder of a couple different successful startups, and she gets annoyed because she's like, quit introducing me to other women who are entrepreneurs or like other, women, because like I need to talk to the men. It's like men are the ones who have the investor dollars. Men are the ones who are running Wall Street firms. Like, stop it. I need to get out of pink ghetto. Did you think about that as you're writing this book? Are you perpetuating that? And also for you, Sarah, do your readers at Bookstr, are they worried about that?
I'm not perpetuating it, I don't think. I've been into Intel for my book tour, crazy book tour. Intel, Rue La La, Dunkin' Donuts with the CEO, all men, and the CFO of Intel. I don't know why I was there. I thought I'd be escorted out by security, but whatever, they were down with boss bitch. So I think having men at the table is super important, and I think it's old school. I think this notion is that women have to be like, more macho or sort of like wear shoulder pads and, I think that's over.
But is it? I mean, we just watched a presidential primary last year where Carly Fiorina, just as probably gave better answers than anybody on the stage, but because she was angry, probably less angry than some of the guys on stage, people saw her as a bitch, even though I don't think she did anything differently than any of the men. So, I don't know that I necessarily agree that we're past it. We should be.
I don't think overcompensating for your femininity is happening in our generation.
Yeah,
I think that's
the girls
over.
are starting to dress like guys, like your hair is shorter, like things are a little bit less.
I'm wearing a daisy
feminine.
dress. I feel pretty confident about my business acumen. I think being a woman is awesome. Like, we can wear dresses
Well, now
and
you have-
pants. You can't.
And now you have the support, so it's like we're
I mean,
just
I don't
now
know what
seeing.
you do on the weekend. But
I'm seeing the support that I haven't seen and that I've heard people before me didn't have. So I think what's happening now is like people are reaching out and saying like, hey, you're a young woman, here, come to the table. They may have been the only woman in the room in the first place, but now there will be 2 or now there will be 3. And so perpetuating that is more of what I'm seeing. I'm a little bit on the younger end of the boardrooms and the venture capitalists room that I'm trying to be in, and women have helped me be there, but also I guess so have men too, and they're very sensitive to the subject. So they're like, hey, here's a young entrepreneur, and like the young woman stuff really isn't impacting me as much. And if anything, what I have also seen is because I'm a young woman and a young entrepreneur, they're saying, oh, she's a gold mine because the woman thing's hot right now. And that to me, I'm like, that's worse. Like, that's terrible. That's something that I'm trying to avoid as well.
I
so.
think even if you have a vagina, it's not like rainbows and butterflies. It's not the sorority there. It's not assumed that, we're all going to hook each other up.
Yeah.
So, I think she is getting money because she's a badass entrepreneur, not because,
Well,
And
do you
because of
find
people
that-
like you guys,
Well, do you
people like
find
you.
because I've actually so when I've had female bosses, they've either been amazing or like trying to like suppress me. Like it's sort of what I haven't had. Like some women can be far worse than men because they feel threatened.
Totally.
I mean, did you find that, Nicole, when you were doing research?
I think it's
for this?
I think it's really individual. A lot of the stuff
Yep.
is my personal stories. I love talking about my failures. It's my most favorite thing to talk about. And again, I needed to know who she was. So
If I had to write a book like that, it'd be very, very long.
You should write a book
Actually,
like
no.
that.
Actually, Clay's working on a book called America's Number One, Number Two. 'Cause
Awesome.
Second place Idol, second place Apprentice, second place Congress.
Is that what it's
Is that
called?
what you're calling it? America's Number One, Number Two? Well, that's what he is.
She's
But anyway.
Make up your own rules, girl.
Sorry.
Okay, Amy
I
Spears.
just
Oh,
made
it
it.
disappeared.
No, Amy Spears
Spears.
says, I need a career change. I am buying the book.
And people can
Hey.
do that where?
Buy the book.
Everywhere.
all
right?
the places, and
Go to the Bookstr.
Yeah, and the Bookstr is super, helpful and supportive because, I think this type of medium is we're opening up a dialogue that was taboo before. We'll talk about everything at the dinner table with ladies, like everything, before we talk about money and business. So, I was hoping to open up that dialogue.
Yeah,
And
you listed your salary
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
every
girl.
job in the book.
Put my money where my mouth is.
And
I'm
really
messing
good
around.
to know. And there's another part I just wanted to hit on that we were talking about earlier. You wrote a note to your former self. Can you talk about that just a little bit for the audience? I know we have a lot of wannabe writers, a lot of women between 18 and 34 that are tuning in right now. So is there anything that you can say as an author, as a business owner, as a person who's published your second book now that's been very successful, and
Yeah.
what would you say to yourself, and can you enlighten them a little bit so they buy the book?
Writing a book, promoting a book is hard AF. Like, Clay, let's talk later, and I'll tell you all the stuff that I learned along the way. I learned a ton after my first book. I know even more now, and I just did my homework. This was not an easy road for me. It took me 10 years, 4 agents, 4 proposals, all sorts of missteps along the way, and it was timing. And so, I came out with a big risk. And so I named a book Rich Bitch. I didn't name it 5 Steps to Financial Freedom. So I could have failed or it could have done really well. But when it hit the New York Times bestseller list right away, it was a great validation. And then women started telling each other. But it was not an easy road. There are a lot of bad books that do well. There are a lot of good books that don't do well. So it's a combination of writing a book. In the end of the day, you can have all the marketing, all the press, billboards, whatever. If you don't write a good book, if you don't have a good product, it's over.
Very
Yeah.
true. Periscope viewer Kwame Rose, this country is failing because there aren't enough women and people of color in leadership positions. And Asha Nath on Facebook says, I want this book. Asha, grab it. You can find it anywhere you buy your books, and you can find out more about it and on Bookstr as well. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope we'll have you back for sure. And
Thank you.
And me, maybe not. I got trouble everywhere I go.
goodness, what a jam-packed show today.
Well, there's a lot of events happening. So.